Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm in the bathroom. So, I just kind of felt like this was like a little secluded area. And I got a random thought while actually using the bathroom. I'm not right now. See, I got my pants on. And I told my best friend, and she was like, you totally actually really could do that because it's a small little area. And while you don't have like a little room to record, this is a nice little area that's pretty decorations, you know. And I can shut the door. And it's like a little office. And it's literally me and you, me and the camera. Y'all are sitting in my sink. So, there's that. But anyways, so welcome back to my channel. I have another Saturday Stories story for you. So, let me set that down. So basically, I'm not going to say like who they are because it's a business, it's a place that I worked. So I don't want to cause them negative energy, and I don't want the people to like have backlash or any of that. And obviously I don't want no legal stuff happening because I mentioned the name of them in the video. So we're just gonna leave that out of there. So I worked at a place in high school, and there was this class trip that I really wanted to go on, and we heard about it my freshman year, and you know, we were supposed to be saving up for it so that when I became a senior, I could go with my choir to Hawaii. And the saving never happened. So at the very last minute, I was like, well, what if I get a job? Save up my own money, and then boom, I can go. So I searched, and I searched, and I searched, and I couldn't get a job anywhere. Like, it was depressing. I literally could not get a job. It was my first job, and then finally someone allowed me to work for them. And I learned. What I will say is I made pizzas. Well, pizza was the main, like, thing that was served. There was also, like, pasta, soups, and salad. And there was also, like, garlic bread or, like, breadsticks, cheese sticks, or whatever. And then, like, there's a lot of different varieties of flavors of pizza that you can get. And then they have, like, their little desserts or whatever. And then, obviously, they have, like, their beverages, the soda and all that. And then on a very rare occasion, we did, like, chicken wings or something like that. And so before I tell you all of the other detail, let me tell you what it was like working at this place for me. So I had 3 managers or supervisors or whatever you want to call them. I had 3 of them. These people never worked at the same time. I think I only ever saw them in the same building maybe once or twice the entire time that I worked in this place. They never talked to each other. Each of them were like mean. Like, they were mean. They didn't want to be bothered. And you can get on their good side, but then their good side didn't last very long, and they each contradicted one another. So I literally went in there and I was told, you can eat in the dining area as long as there's not a line of people who you know is going to want to go and sit down. Like, you can eat in the dining area as long as you're not taking our customers' spaces away because the customers come first. Okay, that's great. So whenever the employees and I would have lunch or whatever, we would see, okay, we're not very busy. We can go and we can sit down and we can have our meal and we'd be just fine. So we do that. And then another manager would be there that day and we happened to be sitting down, and then that manager would get mad at us because we were sitting down. And to that manager, we were not allowed to do that. It was like, no, that's against the rules. You're not supposed to eat, at the tables, because that's where the customers, sit. So then they were like, no, you have to go and eat in the back. Like, if you're going to eat food here, you have to go and eat in the back. So we literally, would get our food, and then we would go into like the back area, not like the back behind the counter where people got their food from, but like the back where like the pizza dough was made, and like the dish pit was, and where people like made, I don't want to say made because it started in one room and just kind of like, anyway, so we had to go back there. And as long as you were still like being available to go and do your job, like if someone needed you or like a customer needed you or whatever the case may be, as long as you were available to be able to go and do your job duties, you could eat in the back. So whenever that manager was there, we were able to do that, thinking, okay, well, we're not allowed to eat in the dining room unless this manager is here or whatever, because this manager said that's fine. So we stopped doing that. We were eating back. But then the third manager would come in and see that we're eating in the back, and then we'd be in trouble for eating in the back. And it's like, if I'm not allowed to eat at the tables and I'm not allowed to eat at the back, when and where can I eat? The third manager said that we had to wait until after our shift was over in order to get our meal from there to be able to eat. And at that time, I want to say we had to take it out. No, we were not allowed to take it out. We had to eat it there before we left the building. But the third manager was like, no, you have to wait until your shift is over. And then once your shift is over, you just kind of like stand there and eat. Which didn't make any sense to me, because why would we stand in front of where all these people are coming up to get their food, eating? Like, why? And of course, the other two managers would come in and they'd be like, what are you doing? You cannot eat out here. You have to go find a table, or you have to eat in the back. And like, they did not communicate at all. So that was my first issue that I had with them. So I got in trouble 3 different times because I was eating in the wrong spot. And I'm like, where else am I supposed to eat? Like, I can't take the food out of the building. I have to eat it here. So where am I supposed to be able to eat if I can't stand up and eat, if I can't go in the back and eat, and if I can't sit at the tables and eat? Like, do you have a designated area? Like, they didn't have a break room. The break room literally was the back room, and that literally wasn't necessarily a break room. Like, when people were going on breaks, they literally sat in the chairs in the dining area. But they had to get up whenever there was a line forming to make sure that there was enough seats for all of the customers. So, there wasn't a designated spot that people were allowed to eat. So that's just one. At this also said place, I was a person who was on the line dealing with the pizza. So we had the cooks making the pizzas. They, did the toppings. They did the special orders or whatever that they were going to do. And then they would give us the pizzas. And at that point in time, we would have to call a runner for like special order pizza or whatever, so that I can say, hey, runner, I need a runner or whatever. So-and-so has this pizza or whatever, it's ready, here you go. And then the runner will take the pizza and they will take it to the table, matching the number or whatever like their little card is at the table, to give to them. So I was the person calling for runners or whatever, and I was taking care of the pizzas. So they had like this little tray or like platform area, like the counter. It's kind of like a buffet or whatever, and you have the pizzas on there. And then I had to remove the old pieces and kind of like keep everything towards the front so that when people came through, they could get the pizza or whatever. I'm sure by some of my descriptions, you guys will probably pinpoint what place I'm talking about, but I'm not going to say what place I'm talking about. So, you know, so I have to remove some of the pieces, and let me tell you, that cheese, when it's hot, is no joke, okay? Like, you have never been burnt before if you have not been burnt by cheese, because my first day, I was cutting a pizza, because you have to learn how to cut the pizza. Right here, my pinky brushed up against the cheese. Oh my God, I could still feel it. Like, right here on the knuckle. Ouch. Okay, like, y'all better be careful with that hot cheese pizza. Don't touch, because it will burn. But anyway, and so I had to remove like the old pieces, and you can tell which ones were the older ones because a pizza is supposed to be like this, right? But when a pizza starts going like this, that means it's older. It's been sitting out a long time and it's starting to dry out and get hard. Obviously, if a customer comes up and they want a pizza and all of the pizzas are like this, ain't nobody gonna want to eat that. So it was my job to pull those pieces off, toss them, and move all of the extra pieces that were still there, that were good, together into the front so that the customer can grab them easier instead of having to reach to the back, because it was hot to keep it warm and everything. And then when and there were sometimes multiple spots that had the same like flavor of pizza or type of pizza or whatever. So there were times when one got low enough, we can literally move the pieces from one and put them onto the other. And then we would just replace the whole pizza. So, you know, I had to do that. And I didn't really have any issues doing that. I guess the only thing that was hard for me is the fact, and it also kind of helped me for later uses for other things, just because going through it and the experience, I now know like the abbreviated stuff. So when other people use those things, I know what they're talking about. Or if I have to like write it down, I will personally use the abbreviations that I learned from this said job. Even if it's not in the same context. But being the person that stood there, I had to take the special orders. And taking special orders, they didn't want to read pepperoni, sausage, ham, you know, whatever the customer was wanting. They wanted to be able to look at it and see an O for onion. They wanted to be able to look at it and like look at the little abbreviations to all of them. So I had to learn all of these codes or whatever to be able to make the pizza. And that was pretty hard. I mean, I kept forgetting, and I know onion, and that's O, and pepperoni was a P. But anyways, but then, so like, I guess the part that I'm starting to talk about now is the fact that they were indecisive on what position I really was. Like, I was about 10 different positions while I was working at this place, and they just didn't know where to put me. Like, they had me on the stock line, and then at one point they even had me as a runner, where I literally was the one running to the tables, getting people their pizzas, and if they needed drinks or anything, I was the one going and getting their drinks and coming back. Or like if they wanted like seconds and they didn't want to get up or whatever, I literally was able to run and get it for them and bring it back to them. And then whenever like they called for a runner, I would be the one to go up there and get it for them and take it to the customer. You know, and then with that being said, and the whole I burnt myself on the pizza, you had to learn how to cut the pizzas, because depending on like the situation and how many pieces, there was a certain way that you had to cut the pizzas to make sure that you had enough. So I was a person who literally helped make the pizzas. Like, they showed me how to make the dough. They showed me how to form the crust. They showed me how they top all of their pizzas. They showed me how to cut it. So I literally at one point was the one making the pizzas. That didn't really last long because they had like one or two people who had always been the two to make the pizzas, and so they didn't really need people for that, but they needed me to be able to, to cut and make the pizzas or whatever. And then at one point I was the person that folded all the boxes. And then the biggest one that I was the majority of the time, and where I had the most problems, was when I was a busser. The first manager, and I think that I was in so many different places because each manager wanted me somewhere different. And when I tell you that these managers never talk to each other, I mean they never talk to each other at all. Like, I literally one day had 2 managers in the same building at the same time working, and they never even looked at each other. Like, there was no hi, there was no communication, there was nothing. They were glaring at each other like, I don't know what their deal was, but they were not communicating at all. And one of the managers was like, no, I want her as a busser. Like, teach her how to bus or whatever. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to explain what being a busser means. You have to go to the table, and you have to make contact with all of the customers. You have to check on like their food. Like, can I get you anything? Are you done with, with the food that you have? So basically, you're kind of like the waiter / waitress. You check on the customer to make sure that their food is good. You see if there's anything that you can get them. Like, if they would like another slice of pizza, you can go and you can get it for them and bring it back. You can go and get them pasta, like whatever we were selling, we could go and get them more of and bring it back to them so that they wouldn't have to. And then obviously the dishes that they sat off to the side, we'd pick up and we'd put them in our own little cart or whatever. And then we would just kind of like circle around in this giant circle, and we would just go and we would look through all of the tables to clean off all of the tables. Now, I just got reheated because I just remembered a part to my own story that thoroughly pisses me off. Thoroughly. But anyway, and then, you ask them like if they're done with that, and then so you clear the table of the dirty dishes, and you bring them clean dishes if they want more food. And then obviously when the table leaves, you then go and you have to clean off the entire table. And then you have to wash it down. You have to wash the seats to prepare it for the next table. You have to remove like the cards, the number things. When you get a specialty pizza, you have to pick a number, or you have to pick that thing so that they know which table to go to. You have to clear that, which typically was cleared when their special order was brought to them, but sometimes people forgot, so you had to do it at that point. And so basically then what happened was they kept sticking me on the floor with another person. And I was literally on, like my side. I went over there. I had my, my little section that I was working on. And I was making sure that everybody on that side was good. They were taken care of. All of their dishes were cleaned. Everything was, I was taking care of these customers, and the other person was on the other side taking care of her customers or like whatever. But it was never like made point that that was her side and that this was my side. It's just I figured, oh, well, she's over there and I'm over here, we don't necessarily need to both be over here, because the first manager told me that I need to, you know, I need to take care of the customers, and wherever the customer is, that's where I have to be, you know. And so I was just kind of like, okay, like whatever, I'm just going to be here. When someone needs something, I'm going to go to them. And that's not necessarily, you know, like picking a side. It's, oh, I'm looking out at the whole room of people. Oh, that person just went up over on this side, so I'm going to go clear their table. And then, oh, someone on the other side just left, so I'm going to go clear their table. That's how that manager wanted it to be. Like, I am bussing the entire room as a whole. And then there was another person there. So in my head, that's what we were doing. We're going around, and whoever was closer, we were just doing that. So I'm irritated with this next part. So basically what happened was, the second manager came in and was like, you guys need to stop being on the same side. Because what was happening is we were seeing people that needed dishes clean. Like we were both walking throughout the entire room of people, just randomly picking up dishes off of tables, like being bussers. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to walk around and pick dishes up and clean them off wherever you see them. And a lot of the times that wound up with both of us being in like the same little area. Well, that's what the first manager wanted. The second manager was like, no, you're not allowed to do that at all. I don't want you guys anywhere near each other. If you're gonna bus over here, then they need to be on their other side, and vice versa. So then we were like, okay. So then what was happening is I'd be over here and she would be over here. And the customers would come in. I would make sure that they were all comfortable, that they had everything that they needed or whatever. And then they would eat their food. And then as people wanted more or like refills, I would, you know, go to their tables and ask them like if I can get them anything. And if there was anything at the table that I can clear for them to get it out of their way, ask them about their experience and how everything is or whatever. And she was doing the same on her side. She also was working there longer than myself. So keeping in my mind what the manager was saying that we needed to be doing, she would finish bussing her tables. And because she didn't have anyone else on that side, she decided to move on to the side that I was on. Which in turn would push me to that side, because I'm like, well, I don't want to get in trouble. So if you're going to come over here, well, then I'm going to go over there. And I didn't realize what she was doing at first. When I got my freaking paycheck, I literally was getting $3 an hour. That's it. $3 a fucking hour. What am I gonna do with $3 an hour? With $3 on my paycheck? I am not going to Hawaii on $3 an hour. No. It was a tip-based place. And this was before I went to college, because like I said, I was in high school. So I didn't understand what a tip-based place was. I thought that you got paid minimum wage, and then whatever tips you made, added on to that. So in my head, I was like, that sounds like a really good job, you know, like whatever. Wrong. The tips was supposed to make up for the amount of money that your job holder, or whatever you want to call it, isn't paying you. And they're paying you less because people tip. And I didn't understand that at the point in time. So all of the people that I had, you know, taken care of on this side, as they were starting to leave and leaving tips on their tables for me to clean, she would be done with her side. So she would come over to my side, in which I'd be like, oh, I can't be on the same side, so I'd leave. She would pick up all my freaking tips. Like, she would bus all of my tables, basically, like the side that I was on. She would bus all the tables. And because she was the one bussing the tables, she was picking up all of the tips that was being left for me. Because I didn't know that that was a thing. I didn't realize that that's what she was doing. And then it kind of dawned on me the more I was working there that, oh, she's literally taking all of my work. Like, she's claiming all of it. And, you know, there was this, which is, two thoughts at once cannot happen at the same exact time. Thought number one, a little girl physically walked over to me and gave me $1. Like, her and her family were sitting at the table. I took really good care of them. I got them food. I got them, like, beverages. I got them clean dishes. I did everything. And I was making sure that they were taken care of. It was like a big, like, table, like, right next to theirs. And I wanted to make sure that, you know, the big table wasn't, you know, like, disrupting them or whatever. And they had a really good time or whatever. And then I had gone to the other side, and the mom saw the other person take my tips. Like, they had left a tip. It wasn't a very big tip. It was like maybe $5 or something. It was almost everything that they had. And because she just wanted to go out with, like, her family or whatever, they didn't really have them, you know, they spent on the food what they had, and then they only had a little bit left for, like, a tip or whatever. And I mean, it's a pizza place, so I mean, how much are you really gonna tip someone at a pizza place? But and then they came back like 10 minutes later or whatever, and the little girl ran straight up to me, and she was like, my mommy said to give this to you. And oh my god, it was the cutest thing ever. I'm never gonna forget that little girl. Like, that was the highlight of my day, let me tell you. But that's what I realized was happening. And it was kind of like a cycle. Like, she would do her side all the way through. And so, like, she would see people, and she would, like, be a hostess or whatever to them. She'd bus them, get the tips, and then I would be working on my side. And then when her tips have all been collected, she would move on to my side. And then me, not wanting to get in trouble, would move. But then when I started noticing it, I stopped moving to the other side so that I can still collect my tips. And then at one point I was going around and I was just collecting my tips, but then I would bus. Well, then we got in trouble again because every time the manager had seen us, we were still on the same side. And that's because she kept coming over to my side. So to that girl, karma's a bitch. Let me just, yes, okay? I was in high school, so it was a part-time job. Obviously, I can't work a full-time job and be a full-time student because that's really hard to do. I cannot be in two places at once. I wish I could, but I can't. So, it's really dry in here, and I left my water out there. Just the nerve of these people. really, really have it. So they were terrible at putting out a schedule. So 9 times out of 10, I had a call to get, like the schedule, to know when I'm working next or whatever. And I went from working like 3 days a week to sometimes I only had 1 day a week. And other times I wasn't even on the schedule at all. And I was like, I know that this is a part-time job, so I'm not always going to get, a lot of hours or like whatever. I understand that I'm still in school, but a lot of the people that work here are people that I go to school with. So, I mean, if they can do it, so can I, kind of thing. It's my first job, so I'm not going to be perfect at it, obviously. And that's, that's fine. That's what's supposed to happen. But then they kept cutting the hours. And so I would go like weeks where I literally was only on the schedule like 2 times, or weeks, where I would be on the schedule 1 time. And then I'd have a period where I was off the schedule for 2 weeks, and then I'd have 1 day. And it was really frustrating to me. I was like, why are you not giving me my hours? Like, I need the money. I'm trying to, I was trying to save up for my trip, and I can't do that if they're not giving me my hours. Like, what's going on here? So, let me tell you what happened when I would call. I literally had people asking me who I was. Like, I'd call and I'd say, hey, it's, Tatiana, because that's my actual name. Y'all are hearing that for the first time. You better note that. But, and I'm just calling to get my schedule or whatever. And they'd be like, Tatiana who? And I'd be like, first name, last name. I work there. I need my schedule. And then they'd be like, oh, okay. So then they'd give me the schedule. And then I would call for the next week. And they again would be like, who are you? And then they were like, sorry, I don't know anybody by that name. What do you mean you don't know anybody by that name? I literally work for you people. And at one point, the person was like, you must have dialed the wrong number. Maybe you worked at a different place and not this one. We don't have anybody that works here that has your name. Whatever. Like, that's literally how I got laid off, basically. They stopped putting me on the schedule. They stopped calling me to give me the schedule. And then when I called them, they pretended like they didn't know who I was. Well, that pissed my dad off. Like, first of all, my paycheck literally was $3. My tax return was $1. I got a $1 tax return. Do you honestly think I made it to Hawaii? No, I didn't. And I'm so salty about it. Like, you don't understand how frustrated. They replaced me in my choir group. They replaced me after the fact that I had learned every dance move to the choreography, after the fact that I learned every song. They replaced me with a person that wasn't even in the group. Unless she was. Was she in the group? I don't know. I don't really care at this point. But they replaced me because I couldn't go. And then while everybody else got to go on the trip, I sat in the choir room because I couldn't afford to go, because no one saved up money for me to be able to go. And then when I tried to do it myself, I was working for a bunch of jerkwads who decided to suck at life and not know what they were doing in a business and pretend, like childish people, pretending that they don't know who I am. And then, you know, my dad, being the person that he is like a very outspoken person. And so he's like, I think you should get your job back. You're out of high school and you're an adult now, so you can go and you can, you know, you have more visibility. You can go and work longer hours, you know, be full-time instead of part-time or whatever. So we're eating there, and I don't recognize anybody. Like, I literally didn't step foot in that place after that happened for a long time. It had been like a year or two. And then when I finally built up the courage to go back in there, not a single person was anybody that I had worked with. Nobody. The managers were different. The co-workers were different. The cooks were different. Like, every person was different. My dad, he pulled over the manager. Like, the person who was taking care of us or whatever, he was like, is your manager here, or supervisor or whatever here? And they're like, yeah, that's actually me. And he was like, can we get her like an application or a job or whatever? Like, she worked here before, and like he summed up the whole story about how they pretended they didn't know who I was, and I basically stopped being put on the schedule or whatever, and she was really intrigued by it, and she ended up doing an on-the-spot interview with me, and she wanted to hire me right then and there on the spot. But she wasn't sure she was allowed to, because then she told us that everybody was fired. Like, they got rid of everybody and they rehired entire new staff. And they didn't want anybody that was working previous, like from the people they have fired, to come back and work for them. Like, they didn't want any of them working there anymore. So she really wanted to hire me. But she went to talk to her boss or whatever and came back and was like, I really want to. I would hire you on the spot without having you talk to the other manager. But unfortunately, we can't, because you worked here previously. You were a part of the group that got fired. And it clicked in my head when I was talking to my best friend. Maybe the reason why the people didn't know who I wasn't them pretending that they didn't know me. Maybe it was because everyone got fired. Therefore, they stopped putting those people on the paper, on the schedule. In my head, there was, if you're going to do that, obviously you flat out tell the person, hey, we're laying you off. You're not going to work for us anymore. And that did not happen. So I don't know if they actually forgot, or if that's what happened. Like, they actually didn't know who I was because they were new people. And because they barely had me on the schedule anyways, it probably looked like I already wasn't there a lot. So, whatever their case was. So I almost got a job back, but then I wasn't able to, because everyone previously, they didn't want having that happen. So I am not entirely sure, like, I don't know if they were already fired, and so the people that I was talking to actually didn't know who I was, or if it was literally the people I worked for and with pretending like they didn't know me. I don't really know, and I unfortunately am probably never going to know, but yeah. And then I grew up. I went to college and I learned a lot about tips. And I've definitely come a long way from that. Like, okay, that's my first job. It's not really setting a good example for people just starting out in the world, wanting to go and work. Not necessarily making it easy for them to want to do any of that when that's how you're treated. I mean, I guess, like, coming from a position where I've worked underneath a boss, and then coming from a position where I've literally been a supervisor, you have to lead by example. Like, if you are a manager of any kind, you have to lead by example. You have to set the bar for everybody else, and you have to be the bad guy. Unfortunately, you have to be the bad guy, and you also have to be the good guy. You have to be the one to make sure that the rules are being followed. If people are standing around and they're not supposed to be, you have to set them straight and make sure that they're not. Are people going to dislike you because of that? Probably. But it has to be done. I mean, there's a friendly way to do it so that they still like you, but they know that, okay, you're not supposed to be doing that. You need to do otherwise. And there's obviously ways that to go about it that's not that way, but you literally have to lead by example. And if you're going to work with a group of them, you have to communicate. Like, you have to say, this is an okay place to be, this is not. If, you know, we have two bussers, this is your side, you stay on that side, and this is your side, stay on that side, you're not allowed to go to the other side. Because in my opinion, I feel like they were working against me. I feel like her and the boss were like working hand in hand, and I felt like he didn't care where she was, but then whenever I moved to a different side, there was an issue, or like whatever. Like, I also don't like the fact that the tips are supposed to make up for what your boss isn't paying you. Like, that's absolute bullshit to me, because there is no guarantee that someone is going to tip you. And if they do tip you, there is no guarantee that it's even going to be, you know, it is not polite for us to demand that they give us a tip. It's not. Because what you think is you doing a good job could be very annoying to them. And if they're annoyed by your service, then they're not going to want to give you a tip. Like, they're literally going to brush you off like they annoyed me. They, you know, I felt like they were in my conversation. I felt like they were constantly at the table and they wouldn't leave us alone. Like, I couldn't eat my meal in peace. Some people do not like that. Some people want to know that you come to the table, you know, it's very hard to be a server. Because some people like it when you're in their face, you're constantly at the table, you're constantly asking about the food, you're constantly, you know, like getting them stuff or whatever, and you're there often checking up on them to make sure everything is going okay and seeing if they need anything. Some people love that, and if you don't give that to them, then they're not going to tip you well. Other people hate that. They don't want a part of it. They think you're in their business too much. They don't want to see as much of you, and because of that, they're not going to tip you. So it's very hard to pinpoint when you should do that and when you shouldn't. And some people don't like tipping at all, because they're not there to tip the person. They're there to eat the food. They don't want to pay your bills. You're there working. That's your job to do that. And people view that as such. Like, it's your job to come and bring me my food. Why am I paying you for that? Your manager should be paying you for that. I didn't like your service anyway, so I'm not going to give you a tip. Like, that's how some people work. That's the headspace that some people are in. Other people have been in the position where they've literally been a waiter or a waitress, so they know what it's like to not get the tips. So when they go out and dine, they give a tip. And it might be a really good tip, where they have a little extra money and they know that those people need it and are working hard and have a lot to do, so they leave a good tip. Some people are not like that. So I don't think that that should be driven as, you know, part of your tip at all. Like, your tip should not make up for what your job is not paying you. It should be a bonus. It should be an add-on. But businesses, they do it that way. And I will never understand why, but they do. So I just wanted to share that experience with you. So yeah. I have a lot of at work drama, at work stories that I could tell you guys. So if you want to know, like, if you're interested in like my work stories and stuff like that, let me know down in the comments below. And yeah, let me know down below. Like, do you want to know about some of my work stories? I mean, that also, like, who has had something similar like that happen to them? Like, it's ridiculous. Like, you're supposed to be the manager, so why are you not acting like one? So I wish there was like a happy ending to that story, but there's not. It just kind of ends like that. Like, they just kind of like braided me out. And I just think that it's crazy at the fact that I was literally going to be rehired on the spot, and I wasn't going in for an interview. I literally was just eating lunch with my dad, and they were going to give me my job back. But because I was a part of the people who had been fired, they didn't want to hire me back. So that's what happened. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit the bell notification so that you can get, also subscribe, because yes, so that you can get all my videos when I upload them. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!